Welcome to Calm Echoes Stories, a sanctuary for your soul. Here, every whisper, every word is a gentle step into peace. Close your eyes. Breathe in calm and let the echoes guide you home.
Today, we'll listen to an inspiring story titled The Boy Who Lost Everything But One Life. Sometimes, a single wrong step can turn our whole life upside down, but it can also open doors to new beginnings. This is not just a story about failure. It's a story about learning, hope, and transformation. So sit back, relax, and let this motivational story remind you that every mistake carries a hidden lesson, one that can truly change your life forever.
One small mistake that changed everything. Life-changing motivational story. The ordinary beginning. They say life changes not in years, but in moments, and sometimes in the smallest of mistakes. A wrong turn, a missed call, a word said too soon, or not said at all. This is the story of Aaron, an ordinary young man who once believed that life would always follow his plans until one small mistake changed everything. The ordinary life. It was a quiet morning in early spring. The air smelled of rain that never came, and the city was waking up slowly. Cars rolling by, shop shutters creaking open, coffee cups clinking against saucers. Aaron sat by the window of a small apartment on the east side of the city, headphones on, laptop open, a cup of black coffee cooling beside him. He was 27, an architect's assistant in a mid-sized firm. His life was tidy, predictable, and calm, the kind of life you might envy if you craved peace. But underneath that peace, Aaron carried something else, a quiet pressure, a silent need to prove himself. His father used to tell him, "Play safe, Aaron. Stability is everything." So, Aaron did just that. He played safe in his work, in his relationships, even in his dreams. He had been dating a woman named Elena for 3 years. She was warm, patient, and endlessly understanding, the kind of person who smiled with her eyes. Together they planned a life that looked perfect on paper, a modest apartment, steady jobs, and one day, maybe a family. Everything was in place. Everything was fine. Until that morning. The missed call. That morning, Aaron's boss asked him to deliver a set of design blueprints to a client across town. It was routine work, nothing extraordinary. Elena called him while he was getting ready. He saw her name flash on the screen, but he hesitated. He was already late. He thought, "I'll call her back after the meeting." A small choice, a tiny, harmless decision. He slipped the phone into his pocket, grabbed the blueprints, and left. The rush. The streets were crowded. Traffic lights blinked lazily. Inside the cab, Aaron scrolled through emails while the driver hummed an old tune. He didn't notice the drizzle thickening into rain. He didn't notice the missed call notification that flashed again. When he finally reached the client's office, his phone buzzed once more. A message from Elena. "Hey, I just wanted to talk about something important. Call me when you're free." He smiled faintly, typed a quick reply, "Sure, after the meeting," and put the phone on silent. He thought it could wait. He was wrong. The moment that changed everything. The meeting ran longer than expected. By the time Aaron stepped out, the rain had turned into a downpour. He checked his phone, 5 missed calls from Elena, and a voicemail. He pressed play. Her voice trembled slightly. "Aaron, it's not urgent, but I need to tell you something. I got a call from the hospital. It's about my dad. Please call me when you can." His stomach tightened. He dialed immediately, but no one answered. At that same time, across the city, Elena was driving to the hospital alone in heavy rain. And somewhere along the highway, just a few miles from the hospital, her car skidded on the wet road. That single moment, the few seconds he chose not to answer her call, became the point where everything changed. The realization. Aaron reached the hospital 30 minutes later. The smell of antiseptic hit him as he entered. The corridors felt too white, too silent. When he saw Elena's mother crying near the ER door, his heart froze. He never got to hear the rest of Elena's message. He never got to tell her that he loved her. And in that instant, the world he knew, the routine, the order, the quiet, fell apart. Reflection. It's strange, isn't it, how one small choice, to delay a call, to ignore a voice, can become the border between before and after. Aaron sat in his car for hours after leaving the hospital. He replayed that moment again and again. Her name on the screen, his thumb hovering, his mind saying, later. Later never came. And from that day on, Aaron's life became divided into 2 halves. The life he lived and the life that could have been. The quiet aftermath. Days turned into weeks. Aaron returned to work, but the world felt distant. Coffee tasted dull. Conversations blurred into noise. He stopped visiting his favorite cafe. He stopped drawing. Even music, his one comfort, began to sound hollow. He didn't talk much about what happened. He simply carried it, a quiet, invisible weight that lived in every breath. But pain, if you let it, can become a teacher. It doesn't shout, it whispers. And in those whispers, Aaron began to hear something new, a call to change. This is where his story truly begins, not in the mistake itself, but in what he chose to do after. Because a mistake, no matter how small, doesn't have to define you. It can refine you.
The silence after. When someone you love dies, the world doesn't stop. It just becomes painfully quiet. I remember standing in that cold hospital room, looking at my father's still face, and realizing for the first time no amount of effort could change this. Everything I had worked for, the perfect grades, the future plans, none of it mattered anymore. That night, my mother held my hand and whispered, "We'll be okay, Ethan." But her voice cracked in a way that told me she didn't believe it either. The days that followed. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Funeral arrangements, condolences, endless visitors saying the same words. "He was a good man. Stay strong." I smiled politely, but inside, I was falling apart. My father's store shut down. Bills piled up. My mother tried to stay calm, but I could see the fear in her eyes. The same fear I felt every night when I lay awake, wondering what would happen next. The breaking point. One evening, I overheard my mother crying in the kitchen. Her voice was low, trembling. She was talking to my father's picture.
You said we'd grow old together. You promised me we'd be okay. That sound, her breaking, did something to me. I wanted to fix everything, but I was just a boy with empty hands and too many dreams. So I made a choice. I dropped out of school and started working part-time at a warehouse to help pay the bills. I told myself it was temporary, just until we got back on our feet. But life had other plans. Losing her, too. A year later, my mother fell sick. At first it was small, coughing, fatigue, but soon it became worse. The doctor said it was her heart. I worked longer hours, sold our furniture, did everything I could, but medicine costs more than love. One night, she called me close and whispered, "Ethan, don't let pain make you bitter. Let it make you kind." Those were her last words. When she was gone, the silence returned, colder this time, heavier.
Alone. Within a year, I lost everything. My father, my mother, my home. The house was sold to cover debts. The warehouse let me go after downsizing. I found myself standing on an empty street one night, a bag of clothes, a few crumpled bills, and nothing else. That's when I realized what it truly means to lose everything. Not the things you can touch, but the things that held you together. The bench. I ended up sleeping on a park bench for the first time that night. It was cold. People walked past me without looking. For the first time in my life, no one expected anything from me. And that, strangely, hurt the most. I remember staring at the stars and whispering, "If there's a reason for all this, please, let me see it." There was no answer. Just the quiet, and the feeling that maybe this was it, the end of my story. But I didn't know then. It was only the beginning.
Sometimes life has to take everything away so it can teach you what truly matters. That night, I didn't know how, but somewhere deep inside, I promised myself I'd find a reason to start again. The first morning after losing everything is the hardest one to wake up to. There's no alarm clock, no familiar voice calling your name, no reason to rise, except the fact that you're still breathing. And sometimes, even that feels like a burden. The empty street. I spent the first few days wandering the city, trying to look like I still belong somewhere. But you can't hide emptiness forever. People can sense it, the kind of lostness that clings to you like a shadow. I'd sit in front of coffee shops, watching strangers laugh and talk, and wonder if they knew how lucky they were just to have someone to sit beside. There's something cruel about watching the world move on while you're stuck in place. The first hunger. The first time I went a whole day without food, I thought I'd just sleep through the hunger. But the body doesn't forget. It reminds you again and again that you are still alive, even when you wish you weren't. I found a half-eaten sandwich in a trash can behind a cafe. I stared at it for a long time, my pride screaming louder than my stomach. Then I remembered my mother's voice. "Pride can't feed you, Ethan." So I picked it up and ate. It was the most humiliating meal of my life. but it also kept me alive. The nights cold. The nights were worse than the days. The city lights looked beautiful from a distance, but they didn't warm you. I learned to sleep sitting up, back against a wall, arms crossed, pretending I was waiting for someone who'd never come. One night, it started raining. I tried to hide under an old newspaper stand, but the wind blew the rain sideways. As I shivered there, drenched and half asleep, I whispered, "Mom, if you can see me, please tell me what to do." But the only reply was the sound of rain.
The old man. On my 5th morning on the streets, an old man sat beside me on the bench. He looked worn, clothes faded, shoes torn, eyes kind. He didn't ask who I was, didn't ask what I'd lost. He just took out a piece of bread from his pocket and said, "You look hungry. Here." I wanted to refuse, but he smiled, a smile that said, "It's okay to be helped." So I took it. We sat there in silence, sharing dry bread and the same invisible pain. After a while, he said quietly, "You think you've lost everything, son, but life doesn't take, it trades." I frowned. "Trades?" He nodded. "You'll see, it takes something from you to give something you couldn't have found otherwise. The secret is, don't close your heart before it happens." Then he stood, patted my shoulder, and walked away. I never saw him again, but those words stayed with me. Life doesn't take, it trades. The shelter. That night I found a small shelter at the edge of the city. They served soup and bread to anyone who asked, no questions. The woman who ran it smiled gently as she handed me a bowl. "Eat slowly," she said. "You look like you've been running for a long time." I wanted to tell her everything about my parents, the house, the pain, but the words caught in my throat. So I just nodded and said, "Thank you." That night I slept on a thin mattress under a flickering light, but for the first time in weeks, I felt safe.
The mirror. The shelter had a small bathroom with a cracked mirror. I hadn't seen my reflection in days. When I finally looked, I didn't recognize myself. My eyes were hollow, my cheeks thin, my hair unkempt. But what scared me most wasn't how I looked. It was how empty I felt. I stared into that mirror and whispered, "Who are you now?" No answer came, but for the first time, I realized I wanted to find out. The quiet shift. Something began to change after that. Not all at once, just small moments. A stranger offering me coffee, a little girl at the shelter drawing me a picture of a sunrise, a volunteer who told me, "You have kind eyes, don't lose that." Each of those moments was like a small spark in the dark, tiny but real. And slowly I began to believe maybe the old man was right. Maybe life hadn't ended. Maybe it was just trading my old world for a new one. The first step forward. One morning I woke up before dawn. The sky was still pale, the air crisp.
I stood outside the shelter, watching the sun rise for the first time in a long while. And in that quiet moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not happiness, not excitement, just peace. I didn't know where life would take me next, but I whispered to myself, if I'm still here, maybe there's a reason.
Sometimes, the lowest place you fall to is the foundation you need to rebuild. And though I didn't know it yet, those lost days were leading me to something far greater than I could imagine.
The stranger's kindness. Some people come into your life like quiet storms. They don't announce themselves. They don't ask permission. They just arrive. And slowly they change everything. That's how I met Grace. The chance meeting. I was walking near the old part of the city one afternoon, looking for small jobs or loose change, when I saw her. She was sitting on a park bench, feeding breadcrumbs to pigeons. Her hair was gray, her clothes simple, and there was something gentle about the way she smiled at the birds, like she saw beauty where others saw nothing. I sat on the other end of the bench, trying to rest my tired legs. After a while, she turned to me and said, "You look like someone who's forgotten how to rest." I laughed softly. Maybe I just forgot how to live. She studied me for a moment. Then maybe you're exactly where you need to be. I didn't understand what she meant then, but those words stayed with me. The cafe job. A few days later, I saw her again, this time outside a small cafe. She recognized me instantly. "You again," she said, smiling. "Are you hungry?" I hesitated, then nodded. She motioned me inside. Turns out she owned the cafe. It was small, warm, and smelled like fresh bread and coffee, a smell that somehow felt like home. She handed me a sandwich and said, "No payment, but if you're looking for work, we could use help cleaning after hours." For a moment, I didn't believe her. "You don't even know me," I said. She shrugged. "Sometimes you don't need to know a person to help them. You just need to see them." That night, I cleaned tables, washed dishes, and swept floors. It was exhausting and strangely healing. At the end of my first shift, she handed me a few bills and said, "It's not much, but it's honest." I couldn't speak. After months of being invisible, someone had finally looked at me and trusted me.
The lesson of grace. Over the weeks that followed, Grace became more than just an employer. She became a quiet presence in my life, a kind of anchor I didn't know I needed. One night, as we were closing, I asked her, "Why did you help me that day in the park?" She smiled. "Because once, someone helped me too." I leaned on the counter. "What happened?" Her eyes softened. "I lost my husband 20 years ago. For months, I couldn't see a reason to keep going. But one stranger sat beside me at a bus stop and said, 'Sometimes, when you've lost everything, you're finally free to see what truly matters.'" She paused, then added, "I never forgot that. So now I try to be that stranger whenever I can." Her words wrapped around me like a blanket. There was no pity in them, only truth. And for the first time since my parents died, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't joy, but it was the beginning of healing. The Little Notebook. One evening, Grace handed me a small, worn-out notebook. She said, "Start writing, not about your pain, about what you notice. The smell of rain, the sound of laughter, the way the sunlight hits the window. Write it all down." I didn't know why, but I did. Every night after work, I'd sit in the corner of the cafe, writing about little things, the things I never paid attention to before. And slowly, I began to see life differently. Even in the smallest details, there was meaning, a rhythm I'd missed while chasing bigger dreams. The realization. Months passed. I had a steady routine now. Work, write, rest, repeat. One morning, Grace looked at me and said, "You've changed, Ethan." I smiled. Maybe I'm remembering who I was supposed to be. She nodded. The world doesn't reward pain, Ethan, but it respects growth. You lost everything, but maybe that's how life made room for something better. Her words hit deep. For the first time, I didn't feel like a victim anymore. I felt alive. The letter. That night, I wrote a letter to my mother. I wrote about Grace, about the cafe, about the small miracles that had led me here. And I ended it with these words. "Mom, I think I understand now. Life doesn't break us to punish us. It breaks us to rebuild us. Thank you for teaching me how to be kind, even when the world isn't." I folded the letter and placed it by the window. The wind carried it away, as if it knew where to take it. The night of reflection. Later that night, Grace locked up the cafe and turned to me. "You've come far, Ethan. What will you do next?" I thought for a moment. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I think I'm ready to start finding out." She smiled. "Then you've already won."
Sometimes, the person who changes your life isn't a hero, but a stranger with a kind heart. Grace didn't give me back what I'd lost. She gave me something far more valuable: the will to believe again.
The hardest part of starting over is believing you deserve to. Even after everything Grace had done for me, a part of me still whispered, "You don't belong here." But she never let me drown in that thought. Every morning when I came to work, she'd greet me with a smile and say, "New day, new chance." And slowly, those words began to sound like truth. The routine of healing. There's something healing about routine. Wiping tables, brewing coffee, hearing the same customers greet you every morning. At first, I thought I was just working to survive, but soon I realized I was learning how to live again. Grace taught me patience, discipline, and the quiet art of presence. She'd say, "Don't rush your healing, Ethan. Even flowers bloom slowly." The forgotten dream. One slow afternoon, I was writing in my little notebook again. Grace came over and peeked at the page. "You write beautifully," she said. "Did you ever think about sharing your words?" I smiled shyly. "It's nothing, just thoughts." She shook her head. "No, Ethan, they're pieces of you, and pieces of you deserve to be seen."
That night, I reread everything I'd written since the shelter. The hunger, the kindness, the pain, the peace. And I realized my story wasn't just sadness. It was growth. It was human. And maybe, if I shared it, someone else might feel a little less alone. The first step. Grace let me use her old cafe's computer after hours. I typed my first story, The Bench That Taught Me Hope. It was short, raw, and honest. I uploaded it to a free blog site under the name E. Carter. I didn't expect anyone to read it, but a week later, someone commented, "I was going to give up today, but this story made me hold on. Thank you." I read that line over and over again, tears blurring the screen. For the first time, I felt purpose, not in what I had, but in what I could give.
Just when life began to make sense again, Grace fell ill. At first, she brushed it off. Just fatigue, she said. But soon the doctors found something serious. I spent nights by her hospital bed, reading my stories to her. One evening, she looked at me, weak but smiling. "Promise me something, Ethan." "Anything," I said. "Keep writing. Keep helping others see light, even when you can't see it yourself." I nodded through tears. That night she squeezed my hand and whispered, "You see now, don't you? Life never took from you. It traded." She closed her eyes with that same gentle smile. And just like that, the woman who had saved me was gone. The aftermath. For days, I sat alone in the empty cafe. Her scarf still hung on the chair by the counter. Her laughter still echoed in my memory. But even in her absence, her words remained, like a light that refused to go out. So I opened my notebook and wrote, "You don't rebuild life. You grow around what you've lost, like roots finding strength through broken ground." That was the day I realized Grace wasn't gone. She was a part of every word I wrote. The rebuild. A year later, I reopened the cafe. Same place, new name. Grace's Table. It wasn't fancy, but it was alive again. The walls were covered with short stories written by people who had lost something and found hope again. Every cup of coffee came with a quote from my notebook. Simple reminders like, "Kindness doesn't need a reason. Pain is proof that you still care. Losing everything can sometimes mean finding yourself." People started coming not just for coffee, but for comfort. And I finally understood what my parents and Grace and life itself had been trying to teach me all along. You don't win life by having more. You win it by giving meaning to what you already have.
The boy who once lost everything had found something far greater. Peace. Not the kind that comes from comfort, but the kind that comes from understanding. Grace was right. Life doesn't take, it trades. And what it gave me in return was the strength to start again.
It's been 10 years since that boy sat alone on a park bench, believing his life was over. Sometimes I still walk past that same bench. It's old now, the paint chipped and faded. But when I sit there, I can almost see my younger self, lost, broken, and waiting for a reason to keep breathing. And I wish I could tell him what I know now. The Cafe of Hope. Grace's table is still open. The same smell of coffee and bread fills the air every morning. Except now, the cafe isn't just a place, it's a story. People come here from all walks of life. Some with heavy hearts, some just looking for silence. And when they sit down, they find small notes tucked under the cups. Handwritten messages of hope left by others who've been where they are. One of them reads, "You are not what you lost. You are what you choose to become after." Every day, I watch someone pick up a note, read it, and smile through tears. That's when I know Grace's kindness still lives on. The talk with the boy. One afternoon, a boy came into the cafe. He couldn't have been more than 17. Thin, nervous, with tired eyes that I recognized immediately. He asked, "Do you hire part-time workers?" Something about him reminded me of myself. I smiled. "We do. What's your name?" "Liam," he said. "All right, Liam, you can start tomorrow." As he turned to leave, he hesitated. "Why are you being so nice to me?" I looked at him, and the words came naturally. Because once, someone was nice to me when I didn't think I deserved it. He smiled faintly, and in that moment I saw the circle complete itself. The letter to Grace. That night, I wrote another letter, this time to Grace. "Dear Grace, it's been years since you left, but your kindness never stopped moving. The cafe is full of stories now. People who came in lost and left with a piece of hope. I finally understand what you meant. Life doesn't take, it trades. And what it gave me was purpose. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. Thank you for teaching me that love, in all its forms, is the only thing that truly remains." I placed the letter in the old notebook she once gave me, the same one I wrote in when I had nothing but words. Now, it's full.
The reflection. Sometimes on my days off, I visit the ocean. It's quiet there, the kind of quiet that speaks. I sit on the sand, watching the tide pull away and return again. That's what life feels like now. It takes things away, but it always brings something back. Different, yes, but meaningful. I used to believe I lost everything, but now I see I just lost what I didn't need anymore. What remained was what truly mattered. The closing words.
If you're listening to this and you've lost something, someone, a dream, a part of yourself, I want you to remember this. Life will hurt you. It will test you. It will take from you. But one day, when the dust settles, you'll see that the pain was not the end of your story. It was the beginning of your strength. Because sometimes you have to lose everything to finally understand what everything really means.